Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Mom can't hear me. Other people can. It's hard to find the middle of the road volume for everybody to suit everybody. Open your Bibles this morning to Proverbs chapter 11. We're going to be reading verse number 30. I was thinking this week about Sunday school and how that when I was growing up, Sunday school, at least for the teen boys, that's where I spent the majority of my what I remember about Sunday school anyway, was in Rick Williams' class for the teen boys over in Virginia. And he always taught out of Proverbs. You've heard me say that before. Every single week it was something out of Proverbs, because it's an endless resource. And there is a lot of wisdom in there, especially for young men. It's who Proverbs was wrote to, was a young man. But I was thinking about it this week and thinking about the format of Sunday school and I mean, look, even if you have if you eat the very best food that money can buy and you eat it 3 times a day for every meal, you're going to grow weary of that food. So there needs to be variety. There needs to be a difference in some of the stuff that we take in. And when it comes to Sunday school, I feel like it ought to be a little something different every once in a while. And that don't mean we just drink coffee and eat donuts and chit chat for Sunday school. That's not what I mean. But it ought to be more, it's Sunday school. So it's more of a learning thing than it is like listening to preaching. And people will grow. I guess that's what I was telling Kim this week. One of your biggest fears when you are someone who gets up and speaks or preaches or whatever is that people aren't going to listen. You think about that a lot more than I ever thought you would when I was growing up. You think while you're studying and writing all this down and thinking about what you want to, your thought and everything, and you think, I wonder if anybody's even going to listen. How much of this will people listen to? And that doesn't regulate or dictate whether you should or shouldn't say it, obviously. And that's not me even implying that you don't listen. I'm just saying that it plays into the whole way that I approach even getting up here and speaking on Sunday mornings. And so I want to talk about something this morning, but not from necessarily the platform of like, I'm going to preach a message on this. Let's just talk about it. I want to talk about a thought this morning. And this is the thought. This is my thought. What really wins souls? What really does? I've grown up in independent Baptist churches all my life. I don't remember a time when we didn't go to church. So it's always been a part of my life. And I heard somebody say this one time. They said, I've forgot more preaching than you've ever heard. And I feel like that's a lot of people. You've sat in it all your life. You've literally been inundated, completely marinated in everything that it has to offer. One of the things that I have heard throughout my life a lot about, I've heard it talked about, preached on, bored into the minds of people, and it's this matter of soul winning. And it's one of those subjects that I can make a comparison to it that might not be a good idea. It might offend some people. Well, I'll put it this way. I'll say this gently. There are people who love their dogs. Their life is about their dogs. Every time they go to the store, they're looking for something new for their dog. I'm not that guy. We have some dogs. And they're good old dogs, I reckon. But at the end of the day, they're just dogs. And I regard their life. I make sure they're well taken care of. They're comfortable. They're well fed. Matter of fact, everybody look at them and say, them dogs are fat. Because they are. They have a pretty good life. But my life and my world and my desires and my purpose for existing don't revolve around my dogs. And every now and then I'll get aggravated at them and I'll say, I wish we didn't even have these stupid dogs. They just tear everything up. They've chewed the corners off my porch swing. They just tear the flower beds up every other day. You go out there, there's a big hole in the flower bed, and they irritate me. Why are these dogs? They got the best life of any dog I know. Why are they acting like this? I wish we didn't even have these dogs. And my wife looked at me one day and she said, you want me to just find them a new home? And I was like, well, no. I mean, you can't say yes because then you're that guy. You know what I mean? And then everybody's going to look at you and say, what a horrible person you are. So I can't get rid of my dogs, but I have to have them, but they annoy me, but I have to. Do you realize that that's how most people feel about soul winning in church? That's a horrible, I guess, comparison, but at the same time, people really feel that way about it. When you say, I don't even want to, soul winning, the way it was presented to us when I was growing up through church is everybody went out and knocked on doors. They had a night a week that everybody went soul winning, or they called it visitation. Some churches I've been in called it soul winning. I've been out with them before, and I've seen some where there was purpose in it, and I think it's a good thing. It wasn't necessarily going out and trying to proselytize people and get them to get down and say the prayer. It was just going and visiting. It was a night a week set apart where everybody got together and you had somebody in mind to go visit. Whether it was somebody, it wasn't just cold calls like selling insurance or vacuum cleaners. You know what I mean? There was a purpose. There was somebody you'd been thinking about. Maybe it was an old person from the church. Probably one of the most meaningful visits I ever went on was just that. It was an old man that went he was a member of the church we were attending at the time. And he'd not been well. And he still lived alone and everything. And so me and another boy, we went to go visit Mr. David. And when we got there, he was out in the yard picking poke greens to make a poke salad. That's what he was doing. And we visited with him for 3 or 4 hours. Real good visit. Left a lasting impression on me, some of the things the old man said. The old man loved God. He knew God. But just checking up, there was purpose behind what we were doing, okay? To get together and just go because duty demands it. And just going out here and beating down every door in Elsinore or wherever you live is kind of, I don't want to say that it doesn't do any good. But at the same time, it's like a misuse of resource. I feel there's a lot more good that can be done if there's purpose behind what you do. Just to get together so you can check your name off the list of we got together and we did it again this week. And everybody don't want to do it, but everybody won't not do it because then you're that guy. You see the comparison, what I meant? So in Proverbs chapter 11, verse number 30, it says this, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. You've heard that verse 1,000 times. And that is the verse that they pull from to come up with the term of soul winning. That's it. That's where it comes from. Now, I've seen, like what I was just describing, I've seen churches that have an evening a week, or they have an appointed time where people get together and they decide who they're going to go visit, and they go visit with purpose and all that kind of thing. But then I've seen other churches that turn it into this thing that is the reason why people don't even want to associate with it anymore. There is, programs and clubs and classes and workshops and practice runs and all this kind of stuff of it's almost like training, elite training. A lot of times, I don't know, I've heard it said this way so often, and I don't know, as a kid, this is what it translates into. You got to think about how a child sees these things and how they perceive it. But it always was like this. In churches, you had your soul winners. They were like special forces, like an elite group of people. Then you had a different set of elite group, special forces, people called your prayer warriors. it always seemed to me, even as a child, it always seemed to me that was a group that you aspired to attain their level so you could be part of their group. It wasn't something that we were all called to do. It was more something that had been kind of hijacked by the management to motivate people to participate in things. I heard a guy this week, and he was a complete, non-believer. And he was talking about how that he was raised in Baptist church, which shocked the daylights out of me, but then at the same time, it absolutely did not shock me at all. That's what he was saying. In his church growing up, he said his mom had a ministry called Clowns for Christ, and it was a puppet show and a clown troupe. I guess that's what they call a bunch of clowns. And they would dress up and go around, and I guess it was like a kids ministry or something like that. But back in the 80s, that was very common. I remember going to youth conferences, and they had ninjas that came with samurai swords and cut up cucumbers sticking out of people's mouths, and they shot balloons out of people's mouths with a blowgun with darts and stuff. And don't you remember the Power Team? Do you remember seeing them? They went around in the 80s and 90s. It was a big deal. And it was these bodybuilders that went around and did powerlifting. And they'd break chains and bend steel bars. And it was just a circus act, man. But it was all a gimmick to get people to come to entertain them. And then they could slip in the gospel message. And that was... these guys were like celebrities in the religious world. They were rock stars. And in reality, that's kind of sort of why they were doing what they did. Come on. There was all kinds of vaudeville acts and, circus acts that went on in churches that was attractions to get people to come. And it got people involved. Everybody could find a slot somewhere to plug in and get busy. And for the time being, it seemed like they were checking that box for soul winning. If you couldn't be the guy that was so charismatic that you could go out and knock on some stranger's door and say, listen, I'm from such and such a church and I wanted to ask you today and blah, 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 blah. And if you couldn't do that, you could do these other things. You could be involved in all these other things that there were to be involved in. But what killed that? I'm not saying we need more circus acts. That's not what I'm saying. What took that fire that was in everybody to want to do something and put it out? Well, it's funny because I opened the bulletin this morning and there's a little saying down here at the bottom, and it says this: you are an image bearer with a work to do, not a work doer with an image to maintain. And it just dovetails right into exactly what I'm saying this morning about this. Please understand that I am not saying soul winning is something that man made up and we don't need to do it. No, he that winneth souls is wise. But what wins a soul? That's what I want to talk about. The Bible says in Galatians 5:22 and 23, you know it well, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. To win something. You ever hear somebody say, I never seen it that way at all, but this guy here, he won me over. Well, what did he win? Well, he won you. He won the way you think. He convinced you through however he persuaded you. And I promise you that it wasn't through violence or guilt or threatening or humiliation or, manipulation of your spirituality or whatever. That's not how he won him over. What to win something implies that there's a contest or a competition. But we ought to think about with what and between who? In this matter of souls, what's at stake here? If it can be won, it can be lost. He that winneth souls is wise. Well, can a soul be lost? Well, absolutely it can. Can it be won? Just as much. Yes, it can. But what we've done in an effort to have to be this, what it says, a work doer with an image to maintain, is that we have turned. That's what this guy said, that talked about his mom having this Clowns for Christ thing and all this stuff. He said, when I got grown, I decided church wasn't for me, and I was done with it. And he said, I went for years and years, and I never even went back to church at all. He said, and I still don't go to church. But he said, this phenomenon that has happened since I've become an adult about mega churches. He said, I moved to North Carolina, and they're everywhere. So he said, I got to looking into it just out of curiosity to see, I wonder what church is like now. Because he went to a little church somewhere, just a regular church. And he said, now this is what church is? I wonder what's this about? And he said, what I realized right away, mega churches are they are like a representation of America in this sense. We found a way to take religion and turn it into a business. That was his take on mega churches. He said, it's fascinating to me how that they've been able to take and apply a business model to church and turn it into something that's to make money with. And they've done a good job of it. There's an image to maintain in that, you see. And that's what I'm saying about this. When it comes to soul winning, to winning souls, most independent Baptist churches in the last really 50 years, now it's waned off now because times they be a-changing. But for 30 years or so there, this was the fuel in the tank for most Baptist churches, the bus ministry and soul winning. The turnover rate was pretty high, but they had lots of people in their churches. They did. And there's a lot of sentiment that has come from that, like, you keep them with what you get them with, and that's not an untrue statement. It's very true. When the party's over, the crowd leaves. So what were they trying to win? What was being won? Was there anything being won, or was there something being lost in all of that effort? I think about all the money and the time and the effort and the intention behind it. I know that there's been lots of people that I've known in my life that, they truly had a burden for lost souls. And they did the footwork, man. To the point where if anybody in the community seen their car coming, they'd turn the lights off or run away. Or if they knew he was coming, you know who I'm talking about. He's gone now. Oh no, he's here again. Why? Well, because that was his life. He was like a hound dog after it. But it was like he had been given the tools to do masonry work, and he'd been given carpenter tools to do masonry work with. He could do some good, but it was almost like his hands were tied up or something, and it's been this way for a lot of years. To win something, like I said, it implies that, if it can be won, it can be lost. So what is at stake? Is it the soul? Is the soul the prize for this competition or whatever it is? We look at it like it gets to be looked at like a competition, like a contest. I've literally sat in the Soul Winners Club is what it was called. And I just went to it just to see what it was about, because it was so far on the other end of the spectrum for me from what I had been raised around, that I just had to see the other side of the coin. And it was exactly what it sounds like. It was a club. And for however many souls you won, you got a pin. And it was a certain color of jewel. And then for so many more, you got another pin. It was like being part of the Shriners or something. At some point, you had these 3 different colors of jewels, pins that went on your lapel. And then people could look at you and tell you'd won over 100 souls to Christ. And it was so, there were, like the kids say it now, it just gives you the ick. It really did. It was so impersonal and so, monetized, even though we're not talking about money. It was so streamlined, like a business model. It was literally like you were trying to sell them something and you were part of a pyramid scheme or something. There was videos and 6 weeks of training, like every Sunday night for an hour before church. You went and sat through this class, and there was workbooks and paper you had. I mean, there was things you had to fill out and do, and worksheets and all this kind of stuff, so that they could, gin you up and get you motivated and psych you up to be able to go and, hello, my name is Seth Miller and I'm from blah-da-da-da-da church, and present your spiel. They wanted you to work on your presentation, the thing you would say, and write it down and present it to them. Now look, I understand that at some point somebody probably had this idea and their intention was to make it better, make it easier for people, so that people would want to be part of something bigger than themselves and actually go and do something for the Lord in this way. But is that really what wins a soul to Christ? Is the glory for the win of the prize? The soul, just like the pins that I was talking about, the lapel pins that basically were like your stripes on your arm being in the military, and people could recognize your rank. I would say, yeah. I would say that was the reason why it got to be that way for some people. Yes. It was bragging rights, man. The glory was for their prize. Yep. Is losing what is at stake? I would grant you that, yeah, it is. What really is at stake when it comes to winning souls? The fact that they won't be won. You ever think about it? Oh, man. Eternity and forever, the souls that are affected by how you touch their life. It's way more solemn of a thing than a lapel pin or a certificate of recognition from your peers that you have met the quota. I've heard of other churches that you got to check in and, I don't really know how they verify the legitimacy of what you're telling them other than the honor system, but you've got to pass out so many tracts a week and you've got to have so many professions a week under your belt, or else I don't know what, they're going to take your birthday away, or you don't get to sit in your pew, you get to sit in the back. I don't know. They kick you out of their church. Maybe, I don't know. But they've turned soul winning into that kind of a mandatory performance. It's just ludicrous to think that is the perception that some people have when it comes to considering what is really at stake and what really wins a soul. Let me ask you this question. What won you? You remember? Do you remember? What was it? Because I know for me, even growing up in church, I had my own thoughts and opinions about and the path that I was walking and the choices I was making. But it came to a point in time for me. Where the decision was made. There was a lot of people that had a part in winning me over. People who don't even really know that they had a part. There was a guy over in Virginia, and he was a drywall guy. I always feel sorry for every drywall guy that I ever know. Even if they seem happy, it can't be real. Not when you got to deal with drywall every day. But this guy, he was a Christian. And I went to church. Sure. No, I never stopped going to church ever. Not all the way. But I remember one day he caught me outside the garage. We was working on this house, and he was out there mixing up a bucket of mud. And he turned his drill off for a second. He said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. Do you know the Lord as your personal Savior? There ever been a time in your life where you gave your life to Christ, repented of your sins?" And it set me back. Because for me, I knew instantly that in his eyes, I was somebody who needed to be witnessed to. And that's not how I perceived myself. But that man, his name was Frankie Campbell. I don't know, I don't reckon he'll ever hear this. But if he does, I want you to know that you had a part. It planted the seeds that made me start thinking in a real way. Not about what I thought I was, but how I really was. What I appeared to be to good people. And then some good person had enough of a burden for lost people that he looked at me and said, hey man, and listen, that wasn't the first time I'd talked to him. I'd known him for months before he finally breached that subject with me. I'll never forget it. Never. I'll never forget the way I felt the rest of that day. And it wasn't that Frankie made me feel guilty. Oh no. No. The Holy Spirit made me feel guilty. Why? Because he was trying to win something for somebody else. That's what he was doing. The prize wasn't for him. The prize was my soul, but it wasn't for him. And there's where we miss it. See? What won you? Was it a sales pitch? Was it somebody that put their words together in such a way that convinced you 100% right out the gate that you needed what they had? No. I'd just about bet money that that's not what won you. Was it pressure? Was it somebody just every Thursday night they was at your door, beating on your door and driving you nuts until you finally was just like, fine, okay, fine, I'll just come, I'll do it. No, I don't think it was that either. No. I know it wasn't that because that's something that's a thing of the past now. People don't knock on people's doors now. They really don't. I mean, they put Ring doorbells up there and you ring the doorbell and then somebody's looking at you on their phone from wherever they may be in the whole wide world. And they can talk to you and you're just talking to a voice. And that screens out 100% really of the people that come to people's doors now. You know, that has slowly been eliminated from our culture. Do you realize that? I remember when I was a kid, Dad had a friend that lived up the road. They come over to our house a lot. Most of the time, unannounced, right at supper time. For supper. I think it was for supper. But it was just something people did. They just dropped by and visit. Unannounced. Unannounced? How rude. Well, what are you doing? Are you just laying around the house in your underwear? What are you doing? It's daytime. It's 5 o'clock. You ought to be making supper or something. I mean, didn't you work today? Or I don't, you know, it wasn't a taboo thing back in the day for people to just go visit each other. You know, we didn't have these stupid phones where you can just message somebody. I'd like to start making an actual list and just keep adding to it as I think of things through the weeks and months of the way that phones and communication, the way it is now, has negatively affected our culture. What it's destroyed. What it has taken away. I never ever considered once when I was even Wyatt's age growing up, or younger, Maddie's age, younger, you know, what the world was going to be like, how different it was going to be, what was not going to be around anymore in the advent of these phones. I never considered it. I never considered back then that we were right at the doorstep of change in our world. I mean, everybody had a rotary phone. If you were fancy, you had what do they call them? Touch tone. Just buttons with numbers on them, you know? I mean, that was what the phone was. It was on the wall or sitting on the little table by the chair in Grandpa's back porch. I mean, it was just normal. There was one channel on TV that you could get around here unless you had cable. And if you had cable, well, that was awful because there was pornography on there. That literally was the way everybody perceived all of that. And so, you watched the weather in the evening. You watched Dan Rather CBS Evening News while you ate supper. And that's about as much TV as got watched, really. And now everything is so different to the point now that we communicate with everything and everybody more than we ever have. And yet we literally don't talk to each other. We don't go to each other's house. You feel like you're doing something wrong to just go knock on somebody's door. Even if it's like an emergency, like I've got a flat tire, can I use your... Well, nobody says, can I use your phone anymore? I mean, we literally had that conversation in the startup of service here today about getting rid of the phone service because the phone don't even work anymore most of the time. So why would you need to borrow somebody's phone? See? It's pretty deceptive how it's happened, but it has in what we're talking about, it's eliminated the need to talk to other people. It's eliminated the confidence that you have with other people. I mean, what happened during COVID when everybody wore a mask and you couldn't see each other's face? People quit talking to each other. Why? Because your face tells the story, man. I can walk up and I can tell if you're mad, if you're sad, if you're happy, if you're high. I can tell all kinds of things about the look on your face. And when you cover up that face, now we don't know. And it's just safer not to talk to each other. And so I believe it's of the devil, really, of how he's just slipped that into our culture and eliminated the whole idea of even talking to each other. And when it comes to this matter of winning souls, communication is paramount. How are you going to win somebody when you don't even talk to them? How are you going to know anybody if you don't even talk to them? You got to talk to each other in your own home if you're going to know each other. So how are you going to know strangers out here if you don't talk? It's something that me and my wife have started doing in the grocery store. Like the kids that run the cash registers and stuff. Pay attention. Pay attention at the people that go through their line in front of you and see how many of them try to have a conversation with these kids. They don't. They literally don't. And what happens when somebody doesn't talk to you? You just don't talk to them. Yeah. And so we make it a point. Say, hey, how's your day going? That's a nice, my wife will say, that your fingernails look so nice or whatever. Whatever it is, just something to start a conversation. And it is unbelievable how it's just like you just break something open and you can't hardly get away through the line because they want to talk. They want to talk. People are starved for interaction. These people are like, I'm alone. I'm not a person that likes to be around people. And don't talk to me. I don't talk to me. Hogwash. I'm calling you out because that's not true. God made everyone in His own image, and He calls us sheep because we're like sheep, and sheep die if they're alone. They're herd animals. And we're not animals, but God made us to be herds too. He just did. And we need each other. They, out there outside these walls, need people from this side of the fence. They need interaction. How are you going to win anyone if they don't even know who you are or what you are or how you think, your character, your personality, your likes, your dislikes? You're of the world. You're in the world. You're not of it, but you're in it. And that's what it means. I'm out of time, but this is the most important part of what I wanted to say. The Bible says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. That's a neat study, tree of life. It's mentioned 10 times in the whole Bible. And it's about 3 different references, like contexts in which it's referenced to. There's in the beginning, the tree of life that was in the garden. Then there is in Proverbs where it talks about things like this. Hope, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Hope deferred maketh the heart sad? Sick. But when the But when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life. That's what it says. This verse here says the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Well, what was the tree of life? It was the thing that made you live eternally. That's why God said, don't touch it. And as soon as they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, He put the angel there and said, guard that tree. Because now they have sinned. And if they eat of that tree of life, they'll live forever. And that cannot be. Not in this state. That's why He guarded that tree of life. A tree of life is exactly what it says. It gives someone life. So think about this. What does a tree provide? Well, I just wrote down a few things that just come to my mind first. A tree provides shade. It's respite. In hot summer days. Remember when we started the Spec House last year, Wyatt? And we went out there in the middle of that field, that one you and Donnie framed by yourself. And there was no trees, not within 100 yards. And the sun beating down on that field, right on that concrete pad. And it was like being in an oven. It was the hottest place you could imagine. And we had our tool trailer sitting there, and the boys was eating their lunch. And they took a picture of it, and they looked like cows in a field somewhere where they follow the shade of the telephone pole or around as the day progresses. Because even a little bit of shade gives a little bit of relief. The righteous is as a tree of life. A tree gives shade. It gives a little bit of relief from the burning sun. And that's what the righteous people are to be. Does it say to who? No, it just says this is what they are. Tree of life. A tree gives shade. A tree gives you material to build with. I mean, that's what I do. And I think about it so often. I wonder where this 2x4, I wonder where it grew. I wonder where it came from. We'll tear out an old house. We'll tear a piece out of an old house sometimes. And the wood that comes out of it, I think, wow, I wonder where this tree came from. I'll look at the grain in the 2x4, and if it's a real tight grain, it tells the tale of how old it is. I wonder where it grew. Well, that's something that trees provide. And it's funny because they provide this at their own expense. That tree died in order to give me something to build my house with. But that's something that a tree does. It's material to build with. It's something that you can build shelter with. Another thing a tree provides is fuel, firewood. I heard an old timer called it stored up sunshine one time. That's what firewood is, stored up sunshine. And you think about it, that tree stood there for 40 or 50 years growing every day. All the storms, all the tornadoes, all of the wind, all the freezing cold, all of its whole life to end up here chunked up and getting thrown in my stove. Why? So I don't freeze to death. Keep my house warm. Yeah, that's something trees provide. What happens to the tree to provide that? It's completely consumed. It's turned to ashes. But what does it do? It preserves a life. So in its own way, it won something, don't you think? Yeah, it had a purpose. Something else you can get from a tree is food. I mean, how many of you have fruit trees? How many of you look for fruit trees? I'm always looking for fruit trees. Everywhere we go, it's like up at Wayne's, they've got peach trees that are loaded this year. I mean, they're already got peaches on them like about the size of a grape and just heavy already. Apples, I'm always looking for apple trees. You got that cider press, and so now I'm always hunting for apple trees where we can get apples, make cider. Yeah, comes from a tree. Does it kill the tree to take its fruit? No, a fruit's just something it gives you. How many little critters live in a tree? You ever thought of it? Oh, lots and lots of them. It's a place to hide. The tree itself is a place to hide. The righteous is a tree of life. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Well, what's the fruit of righteousness? Well, it's what it says. The fruit of the righteous, the fruit of the Spirit is, we read it, love, joy, peace, all the fruit of the Spirit. That's how you win a soul. You're not going to talk somebody out of it being what they are. Because most people are what they believe in. And you just hit them up and start telling them all the reasons why you're right and they're wrong and they're going to fry if they don't change. Boy, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody that's going to cave to that. But if what they get from you is love and joy and peace and long suffering and gentleness, goodness and meekness and faith and temperance, all these wonderful things, if that's what they get when they're around you, you'll be that tree of life for them. And why do you think they paired those two things? The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. Well, because that's how you're going to win them. That's how it happens. You can have the best intentions in the world to go out here and try to persuade a fuerzas, hard as you can go. Just try to strong arm people into making a decision. But if you really want their soul to be won to Christ, then we have to be the tree of life for them. Amen? That's it. That's my thought.